Here are 5 questions to consider asking when it comes to a project manager interview. So when it comes time to the end of an interview and you have interviewed with the hiring manager, they will usually ask you, do you have any questions for me? This is going to be the point in which you ask questions to discern if this role is going to be a good fit for you. The first question you want to ask is, what is the team structure? In my case, I'm an IT project manager. And so what I'm looking for in terms of this answer is, am I going to have to wear multiple hats? Because that has been the case before. Meaning, for instance, am I going to have to be both a business analyst as well as a project manager, or am I going to just be a project manager? And what this helps me to better understand is what my workload is going to potentially look like if I have to take on 2 roles instead of just 1. Number 2 is, how many projects is this role expected to manage at one time? Now, this one is likely fairly obvious. What you're looking for is, again, going back to that workload aspect. Understanding if this position is expected to manage 5 to 10 projects or beyond that, but also understanding the scope and scale of those projects. All projects are not created equal. And so it could be the case that you're managing 5 smaller projects at once versus if you're expected to manage 5 larger projects, then that's going to have a different implication on your workload. So also get an understanding of what small, medium, and large means. That could be a subset of a question that you ask to them. So when you say to them, how many projects is this role expected to manage, you could add on to that, and also how would you define a small, a medium, or a large project for your organization, and then that will give you better insight. Number 3 is there a PMO, a project management office, PMO for short? This is going to give you an insight into how the organization perceives project management and potentially the support that you will or will not get. In general, from my career of being a project manager of over 10 years, what I've seen is organizations that have a PMO place a higher value on the discipline of project management. And so what that means is you will typically have processes set out, you'll have templates, you'll have examples available to you. You'll usually have a career path that's also outlined. And so it doesn't mean if a company doesn't have a PMO that those things don't exist. But if a company does have a PMO, then it's more likely that those things do exist. And so if a company does not have a PMO, then it could be the case that you may have to deal with having less support in your role. And so that could look like not having templates, not having processes, not being clear what a path of escalation could look like. But I will say on the flip side, some folks prefer to work in an environment where there isn't a PMO, because then that means they can really take more control of their project and there's not necessarily standards that they have to follow within the organization, and they can be more creative with how they do project management. Number 4 is this role customer facing? So another question that may be fairly obvious. If a role is customer facing, it is likely to be more challenging because you're going to have to put on a certain kind of face than if you're working on the back end with the team. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have an authentic face regardless of whatever the answer of the question is, but if you've ever worked in a customer facing role as a project manager versus one that is not customer facing, especially if that customer is external to the company, there's a lot of implications that come with that. And so you'll definitely want to understand if this role is client facing or customer facing or not. And finally is, what are the biggest challenges that the interviewer is hoping that the person in this role will overcome? The answer to this question will give you insight into the kinds of problems that they are expecting for you to solve for. And it kind of goes back to question number 1 around the team structure, because depending on how they answer this question will give you a better idea of the types of problems that they expect you to solve for, and if that's something that you want to deal with. As I mentioned, every project manager position can look different. And so there's parts of it that are going to be the same across the board, but if they are, for instance, expecting you to standardize their project management process, that's going to be a different scenario than them just wanting you to manage the projects that they have you assigned to. So those are 5 questions that you can consider asking in a project manager interview. If you want to know more about project management, I have a couple options for you. You can follow me here. You can sign up for my Introduction to Project Management course. You can also sign up for one-on-one coaching. Those last 2 options are available through the link on my profile.